Hi, my name is Sarah Trumbull. I am the founder and CEO of the Job Applicant Perspective, the first anonymous crowdsourced user reviews for job ads across the U.S. Being Yelp in a world of professionally mandated fine dining with no health department and no FDA. So today I'm actually going to be reading from a blog post that I have. I think it's pretty important, and I'm not going to do it in quite a fancy way. This is fancy as I'm getting right now. But this blog post is especially for anybody who is a job seeker who's into economics, side of academia, maybe sociology, organizational psychology, systems theory, labor market economics, platform economics, like that. Especially, there's a lot of overlap with the dating world too. And I would like to kind of go through what I've found from my research. So I say it pretty well, I think, when I talk, but just to avoid rambling, because I am a rambler, former lecturer. Yeah, it does happen. I'm going to read what I wrote because it's a little bit more concise. So, true story. One of the first things you learn when teaching ESL is that you don't actually know your own language as well as you thought. Master's degree later, and I'd still find myself stumped in the middle of class by students' question, relearning grammar I assumed I'd already mastered. The act of encountering someone learning forced me to keep rediscovering what I thought I knew. In some ways, my work in economics follows the same pattern. I didn't come through conventional training. I've learned by walking the terrain itself. If formal economists, investors, and policymakers are like Jefferson buying Louisiana Territory, the online job market, I'm the one who's trekked through it, mapping the ground, finding the rivers, cliffs, and hidden values. Career coaches and resume writers know their local patches of land. My role is different. I bring the lived geography back to those who strategize. I draw maps so they can make better decisions about how this territory actually works and what they want to do about that. Which brings me to what I found. For years, the story about the labor market has been simple. Workers don't have the right skills and employers can't find the right talent. Economists call this a skills mismatch, and it's been the default explanation for unfilled jobs and prolonged unemployment. But what if the story is incomplete? What if the problem isn't workers lacking skills, but a system where inefficiency itself is profitable? What if, when job seekers went online, they were assigned a new hidden role in addition to the two they already had in the newspaper era, a role that changes everything? Who this is for? Job seekers tired of being told it's you when the numbers show otherwise. Recruiters blamed for mismatches they can't fix because the tools themselves are misaligned. Employers frustrated that more postings don't mean more hires. Economists and policymakers who need ground-level insight that challenges the skills mismatch narrative. Anyone wondering why, after decades of technology, hiring still feels harder, not easier? Side note, the following analysis reinterprets key academic findings not to challenge their validity, but to illuminate a larger systemic pattern the authors may not have explicitly addressed. How platform incentives profit from the very inefficiency these studies document. The skills mismatch story is cracking. The dominant narrative says workers are undertrained, inflexible, or unprepared, but the evidence paints a more complicated picture. The business models of online talent platforms, as revealed in their own fiscal year reports, are clear. Platform revenue is tied to job postings, sponsorship, and visibility features, metrics that can increase even if, and especially when, hires do not. That means platforms can grow without necessarily resolving inefficiencies. Now read through the exact same rigorous academic studies of the last 20 years with me and revisualize what we are looking at. Hidden Workers, Untapped Talent from Harvard Business School in 2021. What the research says, the Harvard Business School study estimates 27.4 million Americans are hidden workers, people actively seeking jobs but excluded by automated filters, rigid credential requirements, or narrow job descriptions. The authors frame this as a lost opportunity for employers. Businesses overlook viable candidates because hiring systems are too blunt. Why that's incomplete? This is true, but it's also incomplete. The study frames the issue as a supply-side error, employers missing out, What it doesn't emphasize are two pieces. Number one, job seekers as unprotected consumers have no way of knowing which ATS a company uses, how it's configured, or how to tailor their resumes to it. These are often white labeled, and the HRs themselves don't know what the vocabulary lexical set of the ATS system is. Will the titles from my previous role translate appropriately? Or will the fact that what X company calls project manager, Y company calls team supervisor mean I'm out? Does education translate to learning and development? If I use the right keywords to pass the ATS, will I look manipulative in the interview? There's no transparency, just guesswork. This is a marketplace that governs access to food, shelter, and health care for 160 million Americans and their dependents. Why shouldn't job seekers have the information they need to make informed choices? What is community at all if we can't make informed choices around needs so basic? In addition, it fails to consider the business model of the platforms that enable these filters. Every excluded worker represents more applications, more retries, more engagement, all of which are monetized. Hidden workers aren't just a missed opportunity, they're also a profitable inefficiency. Platforms profit from the very filters that misclassify talent. Every ATS failure, every qualified candidate auto-rejected by rigid keyword filters forces another round of applications, generating more data and engagement for the platform to monetize. Again, there is no recourse. No tech support line exists for the misclassified. The only solution offered, try again and keep fueling the system. Harvard's study, if anything, points to the scope of the global problem of profiting from incrementally extending the unemployment of the unpaid profit engines of the online job market. Second, the lost generation. It was a cohort study published in the Journal of Human Resources in 2021. It went from 2010 to 2021. What the research says, studies of young workers who entered the labor market during the Great Recession show lasting scarring, lower lifetime earnings, delayed career progression, and long-term instability. Economists attribute this to unlucky timing, skills depreciation, and poor matches during the downturns. Why that's incomplete? Again, true, but notice what's left unasked. During the same period, digital hiring platforms were expanding rapidly, promising to make matching faster and more efficient. Yet the scarring persisted. If technology was supposed to reduce mismatch, why did inefficiency worsen? Side note, I've published several more blogs about the 5 warning signs that the labor market has been crashing all along. I'll read that one another time, but I have an answer to that question anyway. Or my answer, it doesn't necessarily make it right, but I'm going to keep going with this version, with this academic reframe here, because this is only to the academic research and the reframe. Again, we're pointing out pretty strong correlation. This is not causation, this is correlation, but there gets a point where you have enough circumstantial evidence that the idea that it's not what I'm talking about becomes kind of absurd. So, yet the scarring persisted. If technology was supposed to reduce mismatch, why did the inefficiency worsen? What's also true is that platform revenue grows with churn, not with successful integration of workers. The lost generation isn't just about skills depreciation. It's also about a system that monetized repeated failures to place workers. It also fails to investigate what information job seekers as consumers had to make informed choices about why the market was not working for them. Again, the longitudinal data points to a predictable outcome. Platform incentives that benefit from extending the unemployment of their silent revenue engines. Intent is not required to cause harm. Simple, uninvestigated market mechanics will do just fine. Again, someone throwing their cigarette out the window near Yellowstone might not intend to cause a fire. Doesn't mean they didn't cause it. JOLTS, hires to openings ratio. This is job opening labor and turnover survey. This is from 2016 to 2025. What the data shows. In 2016, the U.S. recorded about 0.91 hires per job opening. By 2025, the ratio had fallen to 0.74. In 2022, it collapsed to 0.56. Employers are posting more jobs per hire, meaning it takes more openings to produce the same output. Standard interpretation. Economists often frame this as a combination of demographics, retiring workers, skills mismatch, or geographic immobility. Why that's incomplete? All of that may be partly true, but it misses the obvious. The divergence aligns perfectly with platform profitability. LinkedIn, Indeed, and other HR tech providers grew revenues by billions during the same period. Why? Because more postings per hire equals more subscriptions, more advertising, more churn to monetize. Inefficiency isn't a side effect here. It's commercially rewarded. When combined with hidden workers in the last generation, if anything, it builds the case even more stronger. All the data points in the same direction. Platforms optimize what they measure. Like all marketplaces, these are very profitable platforms. What do they measure? Isn't that entirely consistent? Ghost jobs, and these are some reports from Wall Street Journal and PR Resume Builder. There's actually a lot out there, but just picked a few. What the research says. Surveys show that between 20 to 40% of job postings are ghost jobs. Listings employers have no intention of filling. Reasons include building candidate pipelines, gauging talent availability, or signaling growth. For the record, it's not at all clear to me that this is employers doing. We have APIs and scrapers that are utterly unregulated. There's no understanding of what percentage of ghost jobs are employer generated and what percentage of ghost jobs are platform generated via unregulated scrapers. So this isn't any employer's fault necessarily, because even I study these things, I don't have a good, clear through line on what is what here. In an individualized platform, it's very difficult to tell to some degree with the tools I have at hand. But regardless, we do know that 20 to 40% are ghost jobs. Why that's incomplete? True. But what makes ghost jobs systemic rather than incidental is how they fit platform incentives. Ghost postings inflate activity, more clicks, more applications, more engagement to sell back to advertisers and investors. A labor economist might chalk ghost jobs up to bad employer behavior, but the deeper truth is that platforms profit every time ghost jobs proliferate. Noise isn't just tolerated, it's a feature. For the record, I would like to suggest the reason that newspapers didn't have free postings, job postings, and online platforms do is interrelated to the number of ghost postings, Ghost jobs are the engagement bait of the labor market, the equivalent of funny cat videos or babies laughing, designed to keep users scrolling. The difference is the entertainment has devastating real-world consequences, wasted time, eroded trust, and prolonged unemployment. A financial market for food, clothing, shelter, and healthcare cannot operate with placebos mixed in with the medicine on the pharmacy shelves. Said what I said. Skills, tasks, and technologies. This came from MIT, Enber, CIE, CFR, and IZA. It's like a bond place. Anyway, Enber is National Bureau of Economic Research. MIT is Massachusetts Institute of Technology Center. Okay. What the research says, technology has hollowed out middle-skilled jobs, polarizing the labor market into high-skilled and low-skilled roles. Workers who once filled stable mid-level positions are displaced, leading to wage stagnation and inequality. Why that's incomplete? Accurate, but polarization was worsened by hiring platforms that denied consumers, job seekers, access to informed choices by amplifying opacity, aka it's really unclear what's going on. When applicants flood high skills postings, often ghosted or mismatched, platforms still monetize the clicks. When low skilled roles are churn heavy, platforms still monetize the turnover. When we normalize hiring placebos, fake opportunities, or mismatched roles, and treat them as a consumer issue rather than a regulatory one, we accelerate the erosion of the middle class. I would like to make a suggestion that we should re-examine the gig economy from this angle of, platform monetization of worker desperation. The polarization story is in many ways about how polarization increases platform profitability. Recruitment technology revenues, what the data shows, LinkedIn Talent Solutions revenue grew from $1.88 billion in 2015 to over $7 billion in 2023, while overall LinkedIn revenue reached $15 billion. This is from their own fiscal year reports, by the way. They're publicly available to anyone who wants to look. Recruit Holdings HR technology segment, this includes Indeed and Glassdoor, roughly doubled between the mid-2010s and 2023-2024, from under $3 billion to well over $5 billion. Together, these show HR tech has become a multi-billion-dollar industry. There's far, far more HR tech companies than this. I'm just listing two of the big ones that everybody knows. What's missing? If skills mismatch were the true bottleneck, revenue growth should have tracked improvements in efficiency. Instead, revenues exploded while hires to openings fell. That inversion can only be explained by incentive structures. Platforms monetize noise and inefficiency better than they monetize successful outcomes. Pulling it all together, across all of these literatures, the same pattern repeats. The authors are not wrong. Skills mismatch, scarring, polarization, and ghost jobs exist. Agreed. But when we zoom out, we see that inefficiency itself is profitable. It sustained a $100 billion HR tech industry. Pause for a second. I would like to suggest that when U.S. job seekers and employees of the talent acquisition industry both work for years at a time generating revenue for the talent acquisition solutions industry, but only one of them has to get paid. I'm just saying. The conventional read blames workers for mismatches. This framing isn't wrong, but it's incomplete and it ignores the other two frames of reference. None of these studies explicitly examine platform incentives or revenue models. My contribution is to connect those dots. To be clear, I did not run any of these studies. I do not have that skill set or that training. Part of the reason that I chose studies from such impeccable institutions to pull that kind of empirical data is because they're impeccable institutions. I found this pattern throughout the academic literature on hiring. I don't have the credentials or the training to run that kind of thing, so I wanted to pull people who have. So this is not invalidating these authors. It's using their value to effect here. But I have to ask, my contribution is to connect the dots here. Are job seekers, number one, failed employees? Number two, unprotected financial consumers in a market for socioeconomic mobility and financial safety? The labor market, when viewed from the lens of a job seeker, could be considered the equivalent of the stock market for the investor. It's food, clothing, shelter, healthcare, and retirement. Or, all right, so I got failed employees, unprotected financial consumers, or the profitable unpaid human capital that fuels the platform's growth. What if they are actually all three simultaneously in the online labor market? Then the data makes even more sense, and at least one of the solutions to market dysfunction does too. A note on staffing and recruiting. While this piece focuses on the platform architecture that sets the rules of the game, it's important to note that the broader recruiting and staffing industry falls into the same architectural pattern. Its inherent opacity, the hidden financial arrangements, white label contractual existence to job seekers means it often functions as an amplifier of the same systemic problems. Job seekers aren't making informed choices about whether or not they want to apply to a role based on their knowledge of that recruiting company and its well-known practices, good or bad. Just as with ATS systems, job seekers in the recruiting world cannot